we moms want to fix, but we moms need to pray. We need to take everything our kids are going through and all of their struggles, whether they're really teeny tiny little ones or there are adult kids, and we need to take those struggles, take them to God, and we need to hand them over to His very loving, worthy, very capable hands. Hey, my name is Sarah Short, and I'm a busy mom of 5 kids, and after almost 2 decades of parenting, I'm here to share with you everything I've learned from my triumphs and successes and from my biggest mistakes. Think of me as the mom who's been where you are, remembers how hard, hilarious, and exhausting your days are, and wants to help you navigate your days as a mom with courage and intention, all while fostering amazing relationships with your kids and a home life you love. My Nana once told me, there's no way but through. Turns out she was right, in life and in motherhood. So throw in some headphones and come laugh and cry with me as we talk about all things mom. This is the No Way But Through podcast. Welcome back to the No Way But Through podcast. I'm so glad you've joined me today, like I am every time y'all show up here to listen to another episode. I want to remind you that if you follow this podcast over on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, that if you follow it, it'll download right onto your device each week without you needing to get any other notifications. So if you want to head over there and subscribe and follow this podcast, then you'll have the episodes downloaded right to you and you will have them ready to listen anytime you've got time. I was talking with a friend the other day, and she was telling me that there really are 2 different kinds of podcast listeners. There are those who download a whole bunch of episodes, and they always have something to listen to whenever they want to pull one up randomly. And then there are people who literally listen to podcasts every single day, and they basically clear out their queue every day because they listen every available moment. And as soon as a podcast drops, they want to know it's there, and they listen to a certain number of podcasts every day. And I was laughing because I'm not really a podcast listener, which I know is wild considering that I'm about to wrap up my 2nd season on this podcast. But we were both laughing as she was telling me that she pretty much listens to her podcasts, all of the ones that she gets every day. And she told me, she's like, Sarah, I always listen to your podcast on Tuesdays because I get a notification and then I listen. I love that because she's one of the first people that I hear from on Tuesday mornings because she always listens. And you know, we talk a lot on this podcast about people being for you. And one of the sweetest things in my life right now, because I work so hard on this podcast, are my friends who listen and tell me and encourage me. And they make it a priority to listen to this podcast because if nothing else, they want to be able to cheer for me and encourage me. And they are just a really beautiful picture to me and tangible evidence of people who really are for me. And I love them so much. You guys, you know who you are. I love you so, so much. I'm going to talk with you today about 3 different things that our kids need from us when they're going through a hard time. Your kids are going to go through difficult times, and they're likely going to look different between your kids, and they will probably look different than what your friends' kids are going through. But what I'm going to share with you today is universal to all of us. No matter what your kids are going through, they need these things from you as a parent. So I'm going to dive into each of these 3 things and explain them to you, and then try to give you some examples of things and how that's looked like in my life as a mom, and then for both me and Jason as parents, and then how we've seen these different things affect our kids in really positive ways. Ultimately, our kids need a whole lot from us. And if you are a parent, you know that already. If you're a mom, you know how much is required of you all of the time from before they were even born, right? When you were pregnant or you were in the adoption process or fostering to adopt, no matter what stage of parenthood you're in with your kids, it requires a ton of us. Being a mom is a daily laying down of your own life for someone else. And sometimes I think that can get lost in our current world of TikToks and Reels and social media because preparing to be a parent, especially a first-time parent, can often look a whole lot like collecting stuff. Decorating a nursery, buying maternity clothes, looking cute, what stroller we want, all of those things. But we often don't talk about this high honor of being a mom and what that means we're going to have to sacrifice basically ourselves for the rest of our lives. Maybe that sounds depressing and not really something you would want to put on a baby shower card, but I've told you this before. It's been the very pouring out of myself all the way to empty that I have found the most vibrant life. The giving of myself to my kids and choosing their care and their wants and meeting their needs. And all of it has been the best thing that's happened to me as a human. My life is not my own, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Laying down my life for them has been so good for my character and helped me be more like Jesus. And ultimately, that is what I want here in this world. And my kids, my really awesome, beautiful, sometimes misbehaved, sometimes really, really challenging, but really amazing kids have been the catalyst that God has used to do that in my life. And I'm just so grateful to my kids for it. But specifically today, I want to talk to you about when one of them is going through a particularly hard time. This could really be anything. This could be struggles they're going through at school. This could be struggles in friendship or struggling with obedience at home. It could be physical, like a surgery or a disease or any kind of unexpected diagnosis that they have to suffer through. It could be something your family's going through where there's some kind of brokenness or your kids are going through a hard time adjusting to that, like we talked about in the last 2 weeks with helping our kids through change. Some kind of change, a hard change has come into their lives. What I'm going to share with you today can be applied to pretty much any situation that your kids are facing and when they're going through a hard time. So here they are. Here are 3 things our kids need from us when they're going through a challenging time. Number 1, prayer. Can I just tell you in full transparency that this is something that I've had to really work on and something that I've had to intentionally do a lot of practice with and be disciplined about, because I am tempted to believe at times that prayer might not matter. I actually know in my mind that that is not true. But when my kids are going through a hard time, I just want to fix it. I mean, don't you with your kids? I think moms, we have this innate desire to just fix and make better whatever's going on. And we can oftentimes feel like within us, within our very being, we have what we need to do that. I mean, the very first time I heard my first baby cry, all I wanted to do was hold him and kiss his forehead and snuggle him because I just wanted to make it better. Whatever it was, even though I had no idea what to do at the time. We moms want to fix, but we moms need to pray. We need to take everything our kids are going through and all of their struggles, whether they're really teeny tiny little ones or there are adult kids, and we need to take those struggles, take them to God, and we need to hand them over to His very loving, worthy, very capable hands. I remember when one of my kids was in 3rd grade, there was a kid in his class who was bullying him. He would come home and he would repeat to us the things that this boy was saying to him. Y'all, I swear, fire was coming out of my ears when my son would tell me these things because I was so angry and hurt for my son. He was one of my oldest boys, and so I hadn't had a lot of experience with this, and I honestly did not know what to do. My son was really having a difficult time day in and day out with this boy. And I remember sitting on my bed, listening to him as he was talking to me, and me going through all of the different things that I felt like I should be doing. Should I go into school and talk to his teacher? Should I drive over to this kid's house and talk to his mom? Should I bust into school like an absolute lunatic and ream out this kid in front of the class? You know, that's how we moms feel, right? We just want to make it better. I remember my son leaving my room after repeating yet another incident with this boy to me, and me just looking up at God and thinking, God, I just do not know how to handle this, and I don't know what to do. And I remember stopping with my eyes filled with tears as I panned around the room and looked back up at the ceiling. And it was in that moment that I realized I haven't prayed about this. All of these weeks that I've been dealing with this, I had never once taken it to God. I had not asked for his wisdom. I hadn't cried to him about it. I hadn't turned it over and relinquished my own plans and asked him for his blueprint on how to do this well. I remember just falling down onto my bed and sobbing and crying out in prayer to God and asking him for wisdom and just telling him how much I needed him, that I needed his wisdom and guidance, and I needed to know that I was going to be able to get through this with my son. I needed to relinquish control. God didn't need me to fix it. I needed to lay it at his feet and go to him in prayer and realize that it should have been my first course of action, not my last. Not when I was desperate. It should have been my first course of action in the first place. I remember getting up from my bed and going into the bathroom and washing my tear-stained face and feeling even then this sense of relief and clarity and strength. And what should have wiped me out totally, emotionally, physically, mentally, everything, it actually empowered me. I tell my kids all the time that God is always there, always with them, always accessible, always ready, always wanting and beckoning them to come to him. And here I was, the mom, and couldn't do that myself. There was something about my kids' hurt that I felt like I could deal with on my own. I could fix it. And I'm just so grateful for that moment I had there on my bed when my son was in 3rd grade with that bully, because it changed the course of how I began to approach God when my kids were going through hurt and having a hard time. I needed to go to prayer. And now I pray. I pray with my children. I need to model what it looks like to go to God with everything. And I need the wisdom that comes from spending time with him, getting into his word and listening for his voice and knowing how to handle situations. And that comes from intimacy with God. It turns out what I needed to do was go and talk to the teacher. And then the bullying stopped, which I know is actually not always the case with parents when dealing with that kind of situation with a bully at school. So I am not saying that going to the teacher is the answer every time and that everything's then going to be okay. But what I needed to do for my child was I needed to go in and talk with the teacher. And when she talked with this kid, it stopped. It actually turned out that this child was dealing with a medical issue that I was not aware of, and he was taking it out on some of the other students in the class out of all the pain that he was feeling, which then led my heart to compassion. I brought this up to my son the other day as I was preparing for this podcast. I said to him, "Do you remember when you were getting bullied by," well, I'm not going to mention his name. And he said, "Mom, I didn't realize how bad things were going to get for him with all that he was dealing with. And I'm really glad that I didn't stay mad at him after all that happened. And things were actually okay with us then. Our kids don't need us to fix things. Our kids don't need us to fix things more than they need us to pray for things. God works through prayer. He moves through our prayers. And he wants us to be close with him and to reach out to him. And we have a tremendous opportunity when our kids are going through something hard to model that for our kids and to do that well. For them to see mom approaching God in prayer and for them to know and see that they can do the same. Number 2, our kids need guidance. I am always amazed now. I have a lot of teenagers in my house. I am always amazed at what they don't know. And I don't mean that as a knock on my kids because, well, they're kids. I mean that more as commentary on how much I haven't taught them. We cannot expect our kids to know how to do things and how to navigate things that we have not taught them how to do or navigate. We certainly can't expect them to do things that we haven't ever discussed with them or taught them or shown them how to do well. Our kids need our guidance. One of the things that I have found out as my kids are getting older now and living mostly their own lives, especially my adult kids, are areas where I haven't been able to teach them things. Meaning, there's no way I could teach them everything, right? No mom or dad can do that. We are parenting the kids in the scenarios, in the situations that we're presented with, right? But I see how impactful my guidance has been in their lives when I realize they haven't had guidance in a certain area, either because they haven't encountered a specific situation or scenario, or it's something that they haven't shared with me, so I haven't been able to speak into it. When our kids are going through a hard time, they not only need us to specifically help them with the fixes, right? The specific things that we need them to do or want them to do to help them ease the hard time or help comfort them, actions that they need to take in order to make things better and to move forward. But they need us to guide them through the hard time. Meaning, it isn't just about the specific circumstances that they're in at the moment. It's about what it looks like to walk through a hard time and guiding them through that with intentionality and purpose. They don't just need the specifics of how to figure out a certain situation, but they need to know how to work through hard times. My daughter had a couple of orthopedic surgeries a couple of years ago, back to back, about 4 months apart. She had one surgery and then 4 months later she had another one. And with each of those surgeries, she had to go into a body cast and was home from school and obviously couldn't walk. I mean, she couldn't play. She couldn't really do much of anything. She was pretty much 6 weeks in a bed or in a wheelchair. That had all sorts of hard things about it. The loss of her mobility, the physical pain from the actual surgery, not being able to go to school and be with her friends, and having to be literally in a cast from her waist down for 6 weeks. You probably cannot imagine that, and I think that's a good thing because it's not fun. But I remember thinking that I needed to intentionally walk her through this and guide her through her days and those weeks because it was incredibly hard for her and there was a lot of loss for her in that season. But there were also a lot of good things she could begin to do and habits she could begin to form that are hard to do and form when life is coming at us so quickly day in and day out. I remember us being able to intentionally spend time in God's Word together after she woke up in the morning. And that was a lot more difficult when she had to get up and get off to school every day because my girl, she loves to sleep in. But I remember knowing that this was a golden opportunity to begin to foster in her love for being in God's Word that might continue after this hard season had passed. But she needed guidance to do that. She wasn't going to think of that or do that naturally on her own. She needed guidance. She needed to be taught why it was valuable. She needed to be able to see why it was valuable. She needed me to model it for her and bring her along to teach her and guide her so that she could then begin to be changed by it. And y'all, she was. I walked out this morning a little before 7 a.m. from my bedroom, and she was sitting at the table with her brother and her dad, and they were in Matthew together. They're with their Bibles open, just the three of them sitting at the table. Spending time in God's Word has always felt hard for her because she doesn't like to get up early like her brothers do. I mean, I know they don't always like to get up early, but they do get up and they'll spend time with God's Word with their dad. And she was going through a really hard time, and I was able to guide her in a way and challenge her and push her onto a new path and with new habits. And it changed her desire. It changed what she wanted to do. And we see that now. There are so many ways we can apply this. I could give you so many more other stories, but I just want to say that when our kids are going through a hard time, they need our guidance in all the different ways that their particular lives are playing out and all the ways that you want to see God working in them, in their habits, forming and ways of processing things and thinking about things. We have an opportunity as moms, especially when our kids are going through a hard time, to guide them onto paths that will impact them as people. Their hearts are often more tender. And so our kids are often more receptive to guidance when they're going through a hard time. Sometimes that initially looks like a lot of pushback, and it might even look like anger at you as parents. But their hearts, when they're beaten and bruised, are often very tender. And they're often tender to you, even if it's hard to see it sometimes. But our kids need our guidance. They need it through those hard days. And a lot of what we teach them during those hard days and in those hard seasons will pay off dividends later on. And this brings me to the last thing, number 3. Our kids need attention. This one might seem obvious when one of our kids is going through a hard time or all of our kids are going through a collectively difficult time because of something going on in our family. But this can actually be really hard and quite challenging. If you have multiple kids and you're parenting all of them every day, there is so much that our kids need just on a day-to-day basis when things are going smoothly or somewhat smoothly, right? When one of our kids needs more from us because they're going through something particularly difficult just themselves, or they're having a hard time adjusting to change of some sort, like we talked about the last couple of weeks, we can feel like we're already spread so thin, and we may fail to give our kids the particular attention when they need it. There are times when I have just felt completely and totally at capacity, mentally, physically, emotionally. And one of my kids has needed more from me. And in my mind and my heart, I just kind of felt like, gosh, there's all these kids in this family. Like, we're all just going to have to rally and get through this. And this particular kid is going to have to rally and get through it. But y'all, sometimes one of our kids can't rally. They can't just be seen as part of the collective, and they need our focused attention. I have learned this after many years of parenting, and I have learned how hard and how valuable it is to turn my attention to one of my specific kids when they're going through something difficult and pray with them and guide them, as we've already talked about, but then to lavish on them the best that I can, extra attention. This practically looks like time in the car to go get their favorite coffee or drink, or a trip to their favorite fast food place, or a trip to the store to buy something new, or just snuggling up on the sofa browsing Amazon together to get them something they've really been wanting that might help comfort them through whatever hard thing it is they're going through. Focused attention pays dividends. It just does. It gives you time with them for them to open up to you and share, like in the one-on-one time we talked about last week. It gives you windows into their hearts and helping to understand what it is that comforts them when they're going through hard times. Is it a book or is it coffee? Is it their favorite meal at home or their favorite meal at a restaurant? This focused attention allows us to be a tangible and present and a very real reflection of God's love to them. And we can miss it if we don't intentionally do it. This can also be hard and difficult because your other kids might wonder why this specific kid is getting attention, is getting away with stuff, or is getting to go to McDonald's and they don't, or mom seems to be spending more time with this kid than with us. That is a very real thing. And you will experience this if you haven't experienced it yet in explaining to your other kids or helping them see that their sibling's health, their sibling's well-being is worth it. It's worth it to give focused attention to that particular kid that's going through some hard things. And it's then really valuable for your other kids to see that they are not the center of the world and that sometimes we lay down our lives for our siblings who are going through something tough. It's opportunity for them, whether they love it or not, to love their sibling well. And then it's opportunity for you to talk to them about it and explain it to them. But ultimately, for them to be able to see that they're not the center of the universe. And sometimes people need a little bit more. And that mom and dad are going to do that with them. And we're going to do that with their siblings as well when their siblings are going through something tough. Only you will be able to determine what that attention looks like. You're their mom, right? You know them better than anybody. So what that looks like in your family, this purposeful attention that you're giving to one of your kids when they're going through a hard time, that will be specific to your child and to your children. But I will tell you that it's so important and that your love and attention, your prayer and your guidance, all three of those will help them get through a difficult season. It will. As I sat down to prepare for this podcast, wanting so much to give you some help and helping your kids through a tough time, there's something perhaps even more important that I want to share with you before we close out here. When our kids are suffering and going through a hard time, they need these things: prayer and guidance and attention, all wrapped up in your love for them, right? But y'all, when things are going well for our kids, they might need them more. God does his most powerful work in us when we're suffering. The enemy, he does his best work when things are going well. Oftentimes, when we are suffering, y'all, we know we need God. We know we need a close relationship with him because we've come to the end of ourselves and we don't know what else to do. So we reach for him and we dig deep to believe and live out what we know to be true. And that's that he's in control and we know he's present and that he's here with us. We are 1,000 times more likely to trust ourselves when things are going well. When we're in one of those seasons where things seem to be smooth sailing with our kids, or maybe we just don't need so much. At least that's how we live and how we act, right? But hear me say this. We are no more in control when things are going well in our kids' lives than we are when our kids are suffering. We are not more in control when things are going well. We can pat ourselves on the back and think we're doing a really good job as parents. And it's all about us when things are going well, all about us and what we're doing and how we're doing things. And look, our kids are thriving and they're doing well. And we think it's about us and we think we are controlling how things are going. And then when our kids are suffering or going through a really hard time, it isn't about us, right? It surely isn't about our parenting then when our kids are going through a hard time and their lives are falling apart or really difficult stuff has arrived on the scene. And we look up at God and we shake our fists because we surely know He's in control now, right? When we were in control, things were going really well. And now that they're going badly, surely it's Him, right? That's me. That's me with my kids, y'all. But God is in control when things are going badly for our kids, or our perception of badly. And God is in control when they're going well. Both. Our kids, they need our prayer, our guidance, and our attention just as much, if not more, when things are going well. You know, we can often define, quote unquote, things going well for our kids with this version of American success, with prosperity and ease and things going smoothly being the ultimate goal, and our kids not hitting bumps in the road, and surely not them suffering. But God's definition of good for us looks like dependence upon Him, closeness with Him, a reliance on Him, and us needing Him. This is what He wants for our kids. This is good. And if you're old enough to be listening to a podcast, then you know that it is in our times of suffering and when things are not going well that God does that kind of work inside of us and in our hearts. This is what He's doing in our kids. God's definition of good doesn't look different from generation to generation. His definition of good does not change. As I mentioned earlier, y'all, I am 1,000 times more likely to trust myself when things are going well for my kids. Because I think to myself, I did it. I did these things. I did the thing. And now my kid is this or that. My kid is doing well and things are going well for him or her. And I am most dependent on God, most prayerful for wisdom and strength when things have fallen apart for one of my kids or my collective kids. This is when I draw close. This is when I fall over on my bed and I sob. And I look up at my ceiling fan and my eyes turn upward where they should have been all along. Trusting God, trusting His heart for them, and trusting His heart for me as a mother. Prayer, guidance, attention. Do our kids need these things when they are having a hard time? Absolutely. But they need them every day. They need them when things are going well. They need our prayers for them and with them. Because a rough patch is coming. Suffering is coming. And the same God that will sustain them through the suffering and through the pain in their lives and the really hard seasons is available to them, present with them, wanting their gaze and their trust and their hearts when things are going really well for them too. I knew this one was going to make me cry, y'all, because I've lived it and my kids have lived it. And sometimes I can think, only my pillowcase knows all the tears I've shed for the hard things my kids have had to face in all kinds of different ways, some that I would never share here. But just like God is there for them in every season, the really hard ones, and when they feel like they can fly, He's here for us too, the mamas, the ones who cry and pray and guide and dish out attention. Y'all, He's here for us too. See y'all next time. You've just listened to another episode of the No Way But Through podcast. If you want to connect with other like-minded moms and join our growing online community, head on over to Instagram and follow along with us at No Way But Through. You can always reach me over there throughout the week. And if you'd like to financially support this podcast, there's a link at the bottom of every episode where you can do just that.